Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Thaumcraft tutorial with Cybernary. I am he and this is episode 3 of the Thaumcraft tutorial series or mod spotlight that I am going over with you guys. Last episode we talked a little bit more about the essence that you find in objects and also how to do research into certain areas of the book. So from this point forward, everything I show you I will also show you in the book, so you know where you need to go to get the additional information, and also can go back and do some quick reference or reading on anything that you may not have understood that I'm going over. So today we are going to be talking about alchemy. Alchemy is very important. You do need to complete at least some alchemy before you can get into using the infusion altar to make the cooler stuff. This is the infusion altar that's behind me right here, and in the next episode we'll start talking about how to build it and what you can do with it, how to use it. But today we're going to be talking about alchemy, so that's all on the alchemy tab. The very first things that you'll see on your alchemy tab is the crucible, along with a couple of things to unlock, meaning magic tallow, nidor, and aluminum. And glass files will already be unlocked when you get to this tab. So let's start off with the crucible. The crucible is basically a boiling pot of water. It is very easy to make. You make yourself a cauldron using a 7 iron and then slap it with a wand. It doesn't take any viz at all, and that will turn it into a crucible. Now, crucible does need water. You can get a bucket of water and dump it in there, and it does need a heat source. Now, I've got a magical heat source underneath these called nidor, and I'll show you how to make that a little bit later on. But what you can do for your first couple of times using the crucible, you can put a source block of lava underneath. You can also maybe some nether brick or some dirt or something and set it on fire with a flint and steel, and that will also work. So there's a couple options there if you don't have the nidor yet. So that's how you make a cauldron. The other recipe that's open right away is the glass files, and we'll get into what you'll be using these for in the future. But it's a secondary container to the warded jars when you start gathering up Essentia into in liquid form into different containers. Okay, but first off, let me show you how the crucible works. All the boards that I've got set up that have this white U are meant to be crucible recipes, and you'll see I kind of tried to do a copy of what you'll see here in the book itself. The first one we're going to be talking about is magic tallow, which is basically candle wax, and we can or magic wax, and we can make this very, very easily by putting 2 precantatio essence in the crucible and then throwing in some zombie flesh as our catalyst. And this is how most crucible recipes work. Whenever you're looking at a recipe in here, it's going to have the essence of magic the essence that it needs and how much essence it needs already in the crucible before you throw in your catalyst. Now, to get the essence in the crucible, you're going to have to find something that has that essence in it. So what I've done here is I've got me a stack of rotten flesh. I've also got me a stack of netherwort. Netherwort's very, very good for precantatio because as you see, it's got 1 herba and 1 precantatio, so very little waste goes into effect there as far as what magic gets released in the crucible. Whenever you're using the crucible, you want to make sure that you're using as much of the magic that you throw in, or else you will end up releasing bad magic into the atmosphere or into the area around you, and that's called flux. That's the purple goo stuff that you see in certain biomes around your world, the tainted biomes. That's what happens when too much flux gets out into the world. And if you leave extra magic in the crucible or even the infusion altar, will sometimes mess up and release flux into the world. That has a possibility of tainting your environment and turning it into a tainted biome. So something to be careful of. It's one of the drawbacks to using magic, is that magic can go bad and corrupt your world. Okay, so as an example, we're going to make some magic tallow. And magic tallow is important because you'll need it to make candles for your altar, and I'll get into that in the next episode. So we've got ourselves some netherwort which creates or has precantatio in it. And then we've got some zombie flesh to as a catalyst. So I'm going to chuck a couple of these in here, and you'll see that the icons above the cauldron or the crucible show how much magic is in there. Now if I throw that in, throw the zombie flesh in, you'll see it immediately spits out some magic tallow. And the more we do this, I can continue to toss more of this in here and get more of it. Our herba count will continue to go up, but it uses the precantatio whenever you throw in that zombie flesh. So, and the more you use it, you'll see the water level starts to drop off. It's very simple. You just get yourself another water bucket, fill it up, and you'll be fine. So it just consumes a little bit of water every time you use it. Now if I let that stay, you'll see that the herba starts to break down into even other essentia, and you can use that if you'd like. And see, there it goes. It eventually breaks down into a primal essence, meaning terra, and then it will boil off and go up into the atmosphere. Sometimes it'll create flux, sometimes it won't. So you just have to keep your fingers crossed on that. But that is basically how you use the crucible. And we'll watch this here for a second to see what happens to that terra. It's continuing to break it down into its primal aspects, and eventually it'll all boil itself off. Okay, so that one, it broke down into aqua. Okay, so all the herba is now broken down. Is it going to break down the gram? Okay, the terra is boiling off. Alright, the gram boiled down into vicus, and the vicus boiled down into aqua. And now these two can't break down anymore, so they're either going to just boil off or they'll turn into flux. Sometimes you can use this essentia, sometimes you can bottle it up, depending on, okay, so there goes some flux. See, that's the kind of bad stuff that you don't want to happen. Now you can set up crucibles that take every single thing into saves every single essence that it creates, but that's a little bit further on down the line when it comes to some of the automated stuff. So because of that, what you really want to do is, when you're working with your crucible, you want to find stuff that only brings up essence that you need. We'll put this stuff back over here because we've made ourselves some magic tallow, so we can now make ourselves some candles. But let's move on to nitor. Nitor is one of the other three things that you can make right off the bat using your crucible. It's a source of light, and it's also a source of heat and energy. You can use it as a light source. It makes a very good light source if you just want to put that down. You cannot reclaim it though once you break it. Also, the other thing, like I said, it makes a great heat source if you want to place it under your catalysts, or sorry, your crucibles, and that. It needs 3 ingus, 3 lux, and 3 potentia, and then some glowstone to act as a catalyst. Now, what I've done here is I found something that has potentia and ingus in it, and then of course our candles are our lux. So very, very easily here I have found a clean and unwasteful way to make nitor using coal and torches. Coal is going to give us 2 potentia and 2 ingus. The recipe is 3 of each. So if I use 3 coal, that's going to give me 6 of each, and if I throw in 6 torches, that's going to give me 6 lux. So basically it'll give me 2 nitor. So we'll get rid of that one. We'll go ahead and throw all this in, and that one dropped on the ground. So we'll try again. Okay, and then you want to kind of try to do this quickly before the essence kind of boils off. And you should have 6 of each, so we're just going to toss in. Okay, so something went wrong there on our last one. It boiled down, and I was talking too long. So we only got 2, which actually we were supposed to get 2, weren't we? Okay. Yeah, one of them. No, we were supposed to get 3, but one of the essence broke down before we could activate it. So sometimes you may want to go ahead and throw in your catalyst before you finish putting everything else in. That's going to boil itself off and probably add more flux into the atmosphere. So that's something we'll have to keep an eye on. The last of the 3 items that comes up is elementium. Elementium is a energy source that can be used in furnaces and is twice as effective as coal. 1 elementium can smelt half a stack of items, and if you use coal, you'll need coal for the catalyst. But if you use coal, since it has ingus and precantatio or potentia in it, then you'll just need 2 coal to produce. Nope, you'll need 3 coal. Because this will produce, well, 2.5 actually. This will produce 2 ingus and 2 potentia, and then you'll need 3 cobble to make one of these. The other benefit of this is that you can throw it, and it kind of acts like a projectile that can blow up. So that's something else that you can do with it, but usually it's better used as a fuel source for your furnaces. I'm not going to go through showing you how to do each of these. I'm just going to show you some of the other things that you can do with the crucible. You can duplicate your gunpowder. So if you've got ingus and perididio, which as you saw, ingus is fairly common in coal and other items. Perididio is in cobble. You throw some gunpowder in it, and it will toss out 2. It'll duplicate it, so you'll get 2 for 1 on that. Another thing is the thaumium ingot. Thaumium is a very important magical metal that is in Thaumcraft. In fact, we talked a little bit about thaumium wand caps in the last episode. This is a thaumium ingot. This is kind of the basis of where you make it, and you can get thaumium nuggets just like any other kind of metal. You pop a ingot into your crafting table, and you'll be able to make 9 nuggets. So 4 precantatio, that's the magic wand, and an iron bar will give you an ingot bar. So, or I'm sorry, a thaumium bar, not an iron bar. So it converts the iron bar into a thaumium ingot. The other thing that we have here is ways to duplicate metal and purify metal. Now all of this is down here under this section under magical metallurgy, and this will unlock once you scan an iron ingot. The metal purification, what it does is it takes a block of ore, say a block of iron ore or gold or whatever, and it turns it into one of these native clusters. And the native clusters, when you smelt them down in a furnace, will yield 2 ingots. Now this can be very helpful to you, or you may already have things in your modded Minecraft world that allows you to do this with other items. I know in Industrial Craft you can use a macerator to macerate these ores down into dust and be able to smelt the dust for 2 ingots. If you've got Tinkerer's Construct, you can toss this just bare as it is into Tinkerer's Construct, and it will melt it down into 2 ingots. So this side may not be as useful, to some. Now, if you're just playing Thaumcraft, then yeah, absolutely. I'll show you in a little bit how you can set up an automated machine so that it is always dumping the required essence, the metallium and the ordo, into your crucible so that you can constantly output some of these native clusters. Now, as far as duplicating your metals, actually tripling them, you can do that too. You can triple iron, you can triple tin, you can triple copper, and you can triple gold. It does require the essence that you see down here, and the essence are a little bit different for each one. 2 metallum for iron, 2 metallum and Verdius for tin, 2 metallum and permudio for copper, and then 2 metallum and lucrium for gold. Now, when I show you that automated machine later on, this is something else that you might want to do if you'd have a low supply of any of these metals, is set this up so that it drops a nugget in every time it gets these Essentia. It outputs 3 more, and you can make yourself an infinite loop, and it just sits there and constantly makes duplicates your metal, or triples your metal over and over and over again. Metallium and lucrium. Metallium's fairly easy to get to. Lucrium would be a little bit harder. It is the aspect of, or the essentia of greed, and it's that golden hand that we saw that is right there. So diamonds are the only thing that I've got scanned at the moment that uses that's part of lucrium. But like I said, that is an option if you find an item that has that essence that you can smelt down or melt down and use. So those are some of the other recipes that you can do with your crucible. This is kind of the beginning stages. Oh, there we go. I told you that I was going to get some flux. So that's what you get when you leave this stuff out. The best way to get rid of it, as you can see, is just to place blocks and then remove the blocks, and the flux will disappear. But if you leave it out, then it can corrupt your world. So that's the basics of the crucible. Now let's move on to another piece of alchemy that you can use, which is called the alchemical furnace. Excuse me for just a second. Okay, sorry about that. The alchemical furnace is a primary tool that you'll be using when breaking down Essentia, breaking down objects into their base Essentia. It does use this brick called an arcane stone block, along with a furnace and a crucible. Real quickly, we'll get into the arcane stone block and everything that you can do with it in the next episode. But real quickly, here's the recipe for an arcane stone block. It's 8 smooth stone. You can add a shard of any of the 6 primal shards in the center there, and then your wand needs to have 1 ingus and 1 terra, 1 fire and 1 earth, and it will make a stack of blocks. Not a stack of blocks. It will make like 9 blocks, I believe, 8 or 9 blocks. The recipe for this is under artifice, and it's up here in the top right corner called arcane stone. Okay, yeah, and it will make 9. So you'll get all 8 of these back plus 1 when you convert into arcane stone. So we'll be going over a lot of what you can do with arcane stone in the next episode, but for right now, that's how you make it, and this is one of the first recipes we'll talk about when to use it. The furnace does require 5 ingus and 5 aqua, because you will be melting, using fire to melt stuff down and turn it into a liquid. The arcane furnace itself is just this bottom block, and it's what, if you right click on it, you can put fuel down here, you can put your item up here, and it will basically melt it down into the essence Essentia that is part of it. It's basically doing the same thing as a crucible, but it's doing it in a controlled environment where you can capture that into jars and using this alembic. So let's talk about the alembic. Alembic is how you say that. The alembic is what allows you to capture the essence out of the furnace and bottle it up. To do that, you first need to be able to make a viz filter, because it will filter out the viz into, or the essentia, into different alembics. As you can see here, you can put up to 5 alembics on one furnace, and when you have items like what we had over here where it broke down into 3 or 4, the alembics will separate that stuff, essence out, or that viz out, into the different alembics. And if you can look real closely, right here in between each one, you'll see the viz filter that shows up actually in the model itself. By itself, you don't see it, but that's what that viz filter is. It takes 1 silverwood log and 2 pieces of gold and a little bit of wand essence, 5 ordo and 5 aqua. So first you'll need to build the alchemical furnace. Next you'll want to build a viz filter, and then lastly you'll want to use that viz filter to make this alembic. And the alembic takes 5 iron, a bucket, a little bit of gold, and that filter that you just made, with some wand essence, 5 air, 5 aqua, and that'll make 1 alembic. Okay, so with your alchemical furnace and your alembic, you are now able to get yourself some fuel. I'm going to grab me a stack of this, and I'm going to drop it in here, and say I need some precantatio, or sorry, yeah, precantatio. Well, what was it that we found out had a lot of precantatio? Well, that's another wart. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in, I'm not going to drop in all of this, I'm just going to drop in a couple. I'm going to drop in that nether wart, and it's going to light it on fire using this and melt it down, and then right up here you're going to see where it breaks it down into the essentia that it's part of. I'm going to grab this jar of essentia that I've got that already has precantatio in it, and I'm just going to right click on that and gather that up. If I put that back, you'll see we've got more precantatio in there than we had before. We've got 4 instead of just 1. Now I've still got herba sitting up here. Now to gather herba, I'm going to need a different jar. You can't just combine essences, different essence into different jars. So I'll grab that, and then I will put that down right there. So now I've got myself a jar of herba and a jar of precantatio. You will notice this one has a label and this one doesn't. I did put a label on this one before, and I'll show you in a minute how you can put labels on things. It protects the jar from only being able to accept certain items, and not being able to mix up your essences. Now here's another fun fact. You can make a label using a vial, and putting a blank label in a vial in a crafting table together, or your inventory crafting table, will create a label of whatever's in that vial. And you can slap a label on your alembic, and then from that point forward your alembic will only pick up that essentia out of the stream that's going in. So when we get into some of the pipes and stuff like that, you'll see where a label on your alembic is going to be very useful, because you may have a pipe coming out of this alembic going straight into this jar, and you only want precantatio or you only want this alembic to store precantatio or pull precantatio out of the furnace. So knowing that you can put up to 5 on one furnace, knowing that you can put labels onto the alembics and labels on the jars, you can very easily set yourself up a system where you can put all kinds of stuff inside the furnace using a hopper. Just drop point a hopper into the back of the furnace, and you can have a constant supply of items coming in here and them going up into the alembics through the tubes out into their warded jars where you want them. Okay? So how do you make a warded jar? Well, we talked a little bit about that on the first episode, but I'm sure you didn't know what a warded jar was used for at that time. So this is a warded jar. It takes 7 glass panes and 1 wooden slab, could be any type of wood you'd like, and 1 aqua wand essence, and you'll get yourself a warded jar. Now, we were talking about labels before. This is how you make yourself a label. 4 pieces of paper, a slime ball, and an ink sac. And this can be done on any kind of crafting table. It does not require any kind of viz. Makes a label. Now, if you wanted to make a label, if you wanted to label let's see, I don't have it in front of me. Anyway, if you wanted to make a label without slapping it on a jar, I was talking about grabbing a jar of potentia and a label, a blank label, put it into a crafting grid. It could be any kind of crafting grid, and you'll get yourself a label with that kind of essence in it. And just to show you, I can take this label and I can slap it on this alembic, and that means that from that point forward, that alembic will only pull herba out of this alchemical furnace. On the other aspect, I could get a blank label and just slap it on this jar, and it would automatically turn into whatever kind of essence is inside the jar. You can only do this if there's essence inside a jar. You can't do it when the jar is empty. So that's jars and labels. Now, as we get into some of the more advanced stuff, this is all the advanced alchemy using the furnace and the alembic. You'll find reasons or different times when you'll want essence to continue flowing into a jar even after a jar is full. A water jar can hold 64 essence of whatever type that it's currently holding. So this one down here, this herba, can hold 64 of that type of essence. A vial will hold 8 of any kind of essence, but it will only hold 8. It can't hold less, and it can't hold more. So if I was to grab this vial here and try to pull Essentia out of this warded jar, it wouldn't let me because there's not 8 Essentia in the jar. I can't pull a fraction of 8. I have to pull a full 8. I can't pull more, and I definitely can't pull less. Warded jars are the only ones that let you hold a variable of 1 to 64. But say I have a system set up, something like this, where I've got Essentia flowing all over the place into these different warded jars. Well, some jars are going to fill up faster than others. This jar of Ordo here is already full, and that jar up there of Aqua only has 30 in it. Well, I want the system to continue flowing, and I don't want it to get backed up. If I use just typical warded jars, then that Essentia the Ordo Essentia would start backing up and have nowhere else to go and clog up the system. So for that reason, we have what are called void jars. Void jars are just like warded jars, but in the sense that they will continue to pull Viz out of the pipes even if it doesn't have any more space. Now, you don't get to keep that Essentia, that Viz. It gets destroyed, but it won't back up your system. So as long as it's got a full 64 Essentia, then it'll just start it'll still accept it through the pipes, but it'll destroy, and you'll lose any extra that you have. It can be very helpful in an automated system like this, where one Essentia is going to fill up faster than the others. So that's something to keep in mind. And I'll talk a lot more about this system once we get through what all these pipes and what everything that you can build, and with the pipes and stuff. I'll explain what this whole system does and how to use it, and how you can build something like this to help gather up your Essentia. Okay, and you may have noticed I've got a whole big room or big square of Essentia in different jars right over here, and I'll explain what that's for in a minute. Okay, so getting your Essentia out of the alembic and into either a piping system or straight into a jar itself, you're going to need pipes. Okay, this is the generic Essentia tube. This recipe makes 6. Takes one quicksilver, which is an item that comes out of smelting the cinnabar ore. 1 glass, that's 1 glass square, 1 glass block, not a pane, 2 iron and a gold, and 5 aqua, 5 ordo, and that will make 6 tubes for you. Okay, and that's the typical tube that you have here. You've got 5 different upgraded types of tube, 4 different upgraded types of tube over here. that can help with your managing your Essentia piping system. The first one is a valve. You get yourself an Essentia tube, add a lever to it, 5 aqua and 5 ordo, and you'll get yourself an Essentia valve. And what this does is you can place this anywhere you want and then close off a section of your piping system so that Essentia won't flow into certain areas. If you've got a massive system set up where you've got branches where if you're melting down 2 or 3 different items, you may want to close off the system so that the right Essentias go into the right place. And that's what you can do with the valve. Now this is an Essentia resonator. It's a great tool. And again, it is a tool. 4 iron, nether quartz and a stick, 5 aqua and 5 air will make this tool. What you can do is you can right click on any of the pipes that are in your system, and it will tell you what those pipes are going to accept, and what the suction is. The alchemy piping system or tubing system, it all relies on suction. Every single item that you connect up to this, except for the tubes, applies suction to the piping system. This jar is applying 32 suction to this piping system, and for every segment that you go back, it's decreasing by 1 up to the next section. So, and then right here, this centrifuge is applying 127 suction all the way back to where it is. So that's another. If you lose suction, if your tubes are too far, then the Essentia won't flow all the way to where you want it to go. And this is also a good way to tell what Essentia is in your pipes, so that you can troubleshoot flow problems. Okay, so another way you can organize the Essentia going where in your pipes is a filtered Essentia tube. This uses the Viz filter. We talked about how to build that down there when we were building the Alembics, and it does take 16 ordo and 5 aqua to make a filtered Essentia tube. And you'll see the filtered Essentia tubes. I've got several of them here. This is a filtered Essentia tube that is only allowing potentia to go through it. And the way you tell it what essence that you want to go through it is with the labels. You grab yourself a vial of any of the type that you want, you give yourself a blank label, and then once you have the label, you right click on it onto the filtered tube, and from that point forward it will only accept that type of Essentia to flow through it. So that's a very, very powerful way of directing your essence through your tube system. A restricted tube is just a basic tube with 2 smooth stone next to it, and the restricted tube, Essentia tube, cuts the suction down on that piping system by half, I believe. So, I haven't been showing you where we're at. I'm sorry. So, as soon as we're in the tube section, which are over here, the Essentia tubes and the advanced Essentia tubes. Restricted Essentia tubes work like normal, except they have any suction passing through them. To be honest, I haven't run into a situation where I need to reduce the suction. More suction is usually better, but there may be a scenario where you don't want as much suction. So that's what that's for. And then lastly is the directional Essentia tube, and this is a one-way, and the way you can tell with it is that it shows it's got blue rings on the one side that it's going in. So if I was to come over here and place a tube right there, then the blue rings are showing me which direction that it's going in. So that might help if you didn't want Essentia to be able to be flowing in multiple directions. Okay, so just to recap real quickly, because I haven't been having you guys follow along in the book. We did go over these 3 things and how to make them in the Crucible. We went over how to duplicate gunpowder. We came down here into the magical metallurgy and learned about how to purify metal and how to duplicate metal. Then we moved over into this section with the Essentia distillation, which I will tell you, this one research right here is a required research to unlock the infusion altar. So you'll need to explore at least this part here. And it talked about how to make the alchemical furnace and how to make the vis filter and also how to make an arcane alembic. Okay, there's also an alchemical construct which we're going to get to right now, but before we do, I did want to say that we did go over Essentia tubes and advanced Essentia tubes. We also went over warded jars and labels and how to make a label without putting it on a jar, and how to erase a label, which I didn't actually talk. You can put a jar label into a workbench and erase it. And then also how to make voided jars. So let's move up into the centrifuge and automated alchemy. That requires with us talking about this alchemical construct that's over here. Okay, an alchemical construct is a very complicated piece of machinery. Think of it as a brain for alchemy. Okay, it requires some great wood planks, 4 Essentia tubes, 2 Essentia valves, and two Essentia filters, along with 5 aqua and 5 ordo. Okay, and you'll need to build a couple of these to set something up like what we've got over here. The next thing is an alchemical centrifuge. Like I said, the construct is kind of the brain of the device. A centrifuge, what it does is it takes Essentia that is more complex than a primal Essentia, say herba, for instance. Okay, we dealt with herba over there because we were pulling potentia and our precantatio and herba out of netherwort, right? Say you don't want herba. Well, a centrifuge will break herba down into the essence that herba is made of. So if we were to look up herba over here, we would see herba is made of gram and tera. Okay, so a centrifuge is going to break herba down into these essentia for us instead of keeping them as a herba essence in the tubes. Very simply, you need an alembic, a piston, and imagine to power the thing. One of the constructs has a brain and a couple of pipes. It takes 5 ordo, 5 aqua, and 5 perididio to make. The other thing that you'll need if you're going to use a centrifuge is a buffer. The buffer sits on top of the centrifuge and draws all the essentia out of the centrifuge and holds it until it's got a destination to send it. As you can see, it's got a lot of outputs, 5 different outputs for different pipes to go. The centrifuge can only hold 1 essence at a time. The buffer will help alleviate that. And here's the recipe to build it. As you can see, it only takes 4 tubes, 4 vials, and 5 aqua and 5 ordo to make it. Last but not least is a mnemonic matrix. Yes, can't say that word. This is, think of this as adding extra memory to a machine that we're going to build here in a minute. But I did want to show you at least the recipe. It does take 4 amber, 4 iron, and a zombie brain, along with 5 Ingus, 5 aqua, and 5 ordo to make it. So once we get over here to this machine, then I'll show you what you're going to use that for. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about what I've got going on here. I've got 2 different machines. This is just an example of how to set this one up. I've got an alchemical furnace, 2 alembics with labels on them, 1 herba label and 1 precantatio label. I want the precantatio to go into this machine, and I want the herba to go into my centrifuge machines, my centrifuge system that breaks the herba down. Like I said, centrifuge will break the herba down, and what it breaks it down into is the gram, potentia, terra, and victus. Um, like I said, doesn't it breaks it down into all the essences that it finds in there. So what I've got is I've got filtered pipes that take those 4 essence out and put them in different jars that I need. The Potentia is a very powerful essence that you're going to use a lot of. I use it a lot in my jetpacks. Terra obviously is a primal viz. You're going to use that a lot. Now Victus and Graham aren't, so I don't use them a lot at all. So I'm going to send this Victus up into another centrifuge to break that up into Perdidio and air, which is what Victus is made up of. So not only am I breaking Herba up into its 4 essences, I'm continuing to break them up until I get to the primals that I want. So we've got Victus here being broken up into air and Perdidio. Over here we're taking the Graham out and we're breaking it up with another centrifuge into Ordo and Victus. Victus being the heart. Now I don't need Victus either, so I'm going to send the Victus through another centrifuge where it's breaking it down into even more Terra and some Aqua. So basically what I've got here is I've got 4 different centrifuges breaking down any viz that I don't really need into primal viz that is more useful to me. And again, this is something that's fairly easy to get set up. It will take a little bit of time. Now you may be asking, why am I breaking down Herba and why do I need Precantatio over here? Well, this, like I said, this is an automated system where I can put a hopper on the back and I can dump netherwort in it, and it will constantly burn the netherwort, melt down the netherwort into these 2 essences. Now the reason I want Precantatio is that this is an alchemical construct that uses the Precantatio to make magic tallow. And the way you make one of these is you get yourself a crucible. You do not put water in it. It won't work if you put water in it. You put yourself a heat source underneath and 2 of these alchemical constructs on top, one on top of another. Slap it with a wand with at least this much of the 3 viz, Aqua, Ordo, and Ingus, and it will turn into this tower that you've got here. Now, as I said, I've added a mnemonic matrix in the back. That's how you make the mnemonic matrix. It will allow you to do multiple recipes at one time. I am not using that feature for this demonstration, but that is what that's for. You can put up to 6 of these on here, I believe. So the way this works, you tell it what catalyst you want to use, and it will give you an option of different recipes that it can make out of the catalyst that you're using. Think of this as a crucible. Okay, it's a crucible just like what we were talking about at the beginning of the episode, but instead of you dropping in what you want after you've dropped in the other items, you tell it, I want to make a certain recipe, and it will, or I'm going to throw in this catalyst, what can I make with it? And it's going to say, oh, well, you can make Nidor, or you can make tallow, or you can make, if you want to get bold, like we were talking about before, where is it? Here we go. I'm going to throw in a gold nugget. Well, guess what? I'm going to get 3 out, but I need to feed it this much essence. Okay, now you see how it has the 0 through 3. I can come up here and I can activate. Hold on. I can activate this recipe, and then I can add another catalyst to come over here and say I also want to do this one, and I also want to do, we'll put this one down here. I also want to do this no, not that one. Yeah, I also want to do this one. So now it's programmed to do all 3 when it gets the viz for those for all 3 of those recipes. Now I'm going to unlock that one. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to unlock the gold one. We're going to go back to the rotten flesh because that's what I've got this one set up as. But that's what the mnemonic matrix allows you to do. Set up multiple recipes at once. Now I've got a hopper up here at the top that did have a whole bunch of zombie flesh in it. That's what's feeding the catalyst in. Now, as you are starting to understand, I'm pulling precantatio out of this alembic over here to feed the recipe to make magic tallow. Now, if I was to go ahead and add some more zombie flesh into the hopper, and that way it would fill up my my catalyst section here. Now all it needs is some precantatio, right? Well, to do that, I just need to add another stack of netherwort over here into this system. And you will see that all my centrifuges will start spinning and breaking down the herba that it is producing. Now, what's happening over here is that it's taking that precantatio and it's using up the rotten flesh and pumping out magic tallow right here in my in the chest in the front, which is the output. Like I said before, using a system like this where you've got a whole bunch of one thing, say netherwort, you could set up an automated system where it refines gold into native clusters. It basically takes nuggets and triples them using essence. You could set up some golems, which we'll talk about a little bit later on, to grow and pick netherwort if that's the item that you're going to use in here. And then they're putting the netherwort into a chest that's on top of a hopper that feeds directly into this. The only thing that you cannot automate is the fuel on the bottom of the alchemical furnace. There's no way to feed fuel automatically into there. So, but if you've got a very resourceful fuel, you could put a stack of aluminium in there and very easily have this running for a long time. So this is just a little bit, just one example of what you can do with some of the things in the automated section of alchemy. Again, we talked about the alchemical centrifuge, we talked about the buffer, and we also talked about how to automate alchemy. Each matrix increases the number of formulas by 2. So that's basically it when it comes to alchemy. I didn't go over the ethereal bloom. This is a plant that you can use to purify areas that have taint. It is very, very hard to make because you need 8 ventium, and the only way to get ventium is through stuff in taint, like the tainted little tainted gel balls that you get when you kill them, and also shimmer leaves are very, very hard to get. So if you're able to gather this stuff up, you can make yourself an ethereal bloom and plant that in areas where you want it to remove taint. So, but there are other ways to remove taint as well. But that's about it when it comes to the alchemy tab, guys. I hope you guys have enjoyed. In the next episode, we will be going over how to build a infusion altar, and I will explain a little bit in more detail what this big ring of jar of Essentia is. It's one of the primary things that a infusion altar needs is Essentia in jars. So I've got a big setup over there for where my altar can pull from it whatever Essentia it might need when it's making stuff. So alright, well, I think that's about it, guys. I hope you've enjoyed. Like I said, likes are always appreciated. Please stay tuned for episode number 4. Will be coming out soon. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you again in the future. Alright, bye-bye.